argue there is a new social structure of accumulation and some of its elements and some of the evidence for it, and also some discussion of what its weaknesses might be. I want to also add, compared to previous things I've done, some more about the political dynamics of SSAs, the coalitions that form, and I think change over the life of an SSA, at least as I start to think about it, stimulated by the fact that we have appeared in the United States today with a coalition of the right and the far right. and I also have found this to be a difficult topic, whether there's a new SSA, and I think it's because so many things in the U.S. To many of us seem irrational, because they don't seem to be geared toward making profits or growth over the long term. Many of my mainstream colleagues at Berkeley certainly think this is one of them. It's won a Nobel Prize called the Bush policy, a form of looting, which it is because it's been looting from the future with large deficits. So I think I'm probably getting my hands around it, but I couldn't write an abstract. I think it would have been quite long to cover all the topics. So I'm going to talk quickly and flash through some of these slides very fast, just as a way of kind of introducing you to what I want to argue, and I'll write the paper, and it's going to come out in the Review of Radical Political Economics in shorter form without a lot of the tables. This is a paper I gave, or talk I gave as the David Gordon Memorial Lecture last August. Bill Tabb and Ann, I guess, were there. And as I said then, I'm going to need to say it again, David was a very close friend of mine, David Gordon, from the very first day of graduate school, which was about 40 years ago. And we published segmented work with Rick Edwards, also our classmate, about 25 years ago. And then he died about 10 years ago. So we have a lot of kind of anniversaries here. And as I said, also, I still miss him. I would put, by the way, Ernest Mandel on that list. He has a long swings on stages. I gave him my copy of it, so I know it's David, so I know there's been some connection there. All right, so this, I'm going to skip over one like this slide because it seems you all here could know this material. There are three phases. One phase overlaps with the construction of the new one, or exploration. That means that intermediate, that period of decay and exploration, decay of the old, exploration of new is confusing because there is no coherence for a while. And that, I think, is what David was saying in the 1930s in that article that we published in Industrial Relations at Berkeley. It occurs unevenly because there are vested interests. That means there's politics, who loses versus who gains. You have to sweep away. You have contending political conflict visions and contending political coalitions, which are multi-class fractions of one class coalescing with fractions of other classes, strata, whatever you want to call it. It's not one class. They're not contending visions based just on different classes. It's usually more complicated, at least in the U.S. history. And there has to be some coherence. So for a while, you might have a policy like the cold bath that David was talking about, which refers to the very sharp recession, some people call it depression, of 1982, 81, 82, really, after Reagan came to power, which did, in fact, clean away some of the vested interests, weakened certainly labor, for example. But what comes later is a very different kind of policy. It doesn't mean that's going to be the only policy. There has to be takes a while to get the coherence. What is the successful SSA? We've been talking about this the last few days from Delaware, David, and other people. And the view, I guess, in our book is that it has to do with creating the conditions for rapid capital accumulation. Therefore, you have a more rapid period of growth. That's connected to the long swing. And I still believe some modified version of that. What I've written here is generates stability so that you can have economic activity going on after the period of decay, and improved economic outcomes, which means it doesn't have to be, I'm not going to specify whether it's the rate of accumulation that's increased or rate of growth, and so on, at least for some of the groups that are included in the dominant coalition. I think that's how it's been working out lately. And it's also, in doing these analyses, some of the questions Terry raised are excellent. If you look at national growth rates or world growth rates, we did some of both in segmented work in our table. We also, one could also, say, if comparing one period to another, there are other conditions that affect economic growth. So, for example, if a country is growing very fast, if a country has a very large labor force that's not employed yet in an industry or in services, it can grow very quickly. Whereas very rapid population growth will continue to have a growing labor force. But if it doesn't meet those conditions, as European countries don't, the U.S. to some extent hasn't, then the speed limit on growth is going to be less. It's going to be slower. So, of course, we compare periods to some extent. The long swing might have to be modified by some of these factors, or else maybe the answer is that the long swing is really coming in some other country. This is a list of the main institutions, and again, it's familiar to all of you, so I'm not going to spend time on it, except to say that I've added here dominant political coalition as one of the institutions, to make it more explicit. It's something I really was talking about in terms of critical realignment elections in my article in the 1994 book. And I've been trying to come back to the literature on what's in the U.S. called critical realignment elections, which means when the political parties get realigned in a way that creates a new dynamic for the subsequent period. This is just one party won and the other party wins the next one, and so forth, continuing back and forth. This again also partly repeats what Terry had. It's right in the book. I think I read all the dates right. This is what I've called the second SSA, not monopoly capitalism, but monopolistically competitive capitalism, because I think that's a little more accurate. And there's not a lot in just the name. Then here I've made some changes and added a new SSA, the label for new SSA. I never was happy with post-war capitalism or contemporary capitalism or late capitalism, which was Ernest Mandel's title, or advanced capitalism. All these adjectives which we all were using, and it meant we didn't have coherence on what was really going on, and it wasn't descriptive either, except in a temporal way. Government-led is what I've come to. The Berkeley concept called big business, big government capitalism. But government-led is where I think from a lot of this period, for example, 48 through the 70s, a whole lot of the jobs that are being generated in the United States are actually being generated in the public sector. The public sector is growing. So in that sense, it was leading. It was also leading in terms of the creating welfare, or semi-welfare state in the United States, and maintaining kind of acting to maintain countervailing forces. The great book, I think, on this topic is John Galbraith's American Capitalism, Countervailing Power, which I read as an undergraduate this came out in the early 50s, and which describes this change in power in the United States. The other change here, okay, so is the new period then is one of deregulated capitalism. I'm not totally thrilled with that. I don't like, or rather I should say, I don't use neoliberal. And I know a lot of people mean by neoliberal basically it's deregulated and privatized. So maybe it's the same thing, but deregulated is just the word I think that is used more in common parlance than anyone can understand it. Neoliberal is used by a series of social scientists who tend to be lefties, and I want to just speak to ourselves, but also want to feel a little more flexible about what I think this SSA is about. And then in each of these, I've also listed the main form of control of labor to follow along in the book. And this one I call labor flexibility. Spatialization of labor might be another way of putting it on, but or maybe it's segmentation too. So I'll talk about that tomorrow, I guess, sort of the new forms of segmentation that I think certainly developed in the United States and across every European country. It didn't exist when we read our book. And the periodization, some of these years wander around a little bit, depending on which publication you're reading, whether it's Berkeley's, mine, or Bowles and Edwards have a new edition of their textbook on Extending Capitalism. But Frank Roosevelt's co-author just came out about a year ago, and it has a chapter on social structure of accumulation, economic evidence, so yeah, they actually haven't wandered away from it. Sam put that in, and with somewhat different dates, starting more in the 90s or in the 80s. So that's good that we're having some kind of difference, but we need to clarify whether the difference institutional or quantitative, qualitative, whatever. But anyway, this seems about right to me. Of course, I was also looking for periodization that seems to fit the 20-20-38 cycle. Very important that we don't get fixed into these very periodic cycles where some of these things can't be predicted, can't be regulated in terms of excesses that are going to happen every X number of years because of some equation. And the decay, I'm hesitating because I wrote 2006 here. Well, that's because I think maybe the political coalition will decay in about a week. I'm not sure. I'm going to have Nancy Pelosi as the number 3 in the United States Assembly. Anyway, here's my sense of some of the major institutions following that list of what the institutions are. And again, I don't need to spend too much time on some of them, so I'll spend more on. Capital labor relations are very well known and discussed a lot, and I could probably add to this, a longer list of changes that have occurred. It's actually pretty stunning in retrospect. See how much labor markets and employer-employee relationships have changed the frame of the social contract, whatever you want to call it, shifting of risk from the employer to the worker, and so on. I really will put a lot of emphasis on the expansion of the low-wage labor segment, encouraged by immigration in the United States. That's been people who live in the shadows and can't collect Social Security, who can be easily deported, and so forth. Temporary labor contracts, that's our term in the United States, but in Europe they're called fixed labor contracts, fixed duration contracts, definite duration contracts in the French terminology, right? So, as opposed to indefinite, capital relations break up with the post-war oligopolies. Certainly, it's a very different era. And Paul Brand and Paul Sweezy wrote the new, not the capital, or when Galway wrote the new industrial state. They both really came out at the end of a period of stable post-war oligopolies. They didn't predict what was coming right after that. And so, why has it occurred? Not just that it has occurred is important in each of these cases. Why? Partly, actually, there was active deregulation by the Reagan administration, but also the list, the usual kind of list is globalization, changes in finance, hostile takeovers, and so forth, technological change, which wipes out boundaries between industries, between computers and communications, and so forth. Again, in the paper, I'll kind of wander through this more systematically. New governance relations, I'll call this financial managerialism. So Galbraith said that, and following earlier meetings, really was saying that the separation of ownership from management had led to management being in charge, and techno structure, I think he called it. And it's true that the shareholders had a very passive role. From institutions were set up in the Securities Exchange Commission in the 30s and after. So by the 70s, you've got this period of leveraged buyouts and breakups and hostile takeovers, corporate raiders. You break up a company because it's a cash cow, there's so much cash on hand. And in fact, that is there is a backlash, in some sense, or a response to that a lot of managers, the managerial class, the managerial group, were able to achieve, partly at the state legislature level, especially in Delaware, in changing laws on poison pills and so on, made much harder to have hostile takeovers, in effect. And in some way, the labor and progressive organizations, the public pension funds in the United States were involved in this. It's a more complicated story than I'm trying to today. But I think the end of it was that the new managers, new CEOs, rather, the new period are much more financially oriented towards stock market, short-term stock market returns, and they had options and benefits and so on. And they also were able to get themselves, of course, this huge explosion of CEO pay, around which the economics is a really interesting literature about whether that's justified by the growth of this, the Jones Index, say, or whether it's just sheer rent taking. I guess was on my side there. In the international arena, again, this list is it could be shorter or longer. It's not that I think there can only be 4 or 5 or 3 or something on these lists. Just these are the ones that struck me as very prominent. And certainly, this is the part, I guess it's called neoliberalism, or sometimes opening up for trade, and also financial globalization, which is a little different. The Plaza Accord I mentioned because I think that's a key point. That's Baker, St. Baker is chair of the Iraq Strategy Group, issued his report after the election. He won the 2000 election for George Bush. He engineered a new set of currency exchange rates at the Plaza Hotel in 1985 with the foreign finance ministers, I think they were the G8 or so on. And they fluctuated after that with clean hands. And I think that was a period of consolidation. Generally, I think a lot of things happened in the mid-1980s, including that the Reagan second administration moved to the center from where it had been. And it was a tax reform act, which we had on here in 1986. It actually taxed capital gains that was normal income. Capital gains now are taxed at 15%, way below even cuts and income taxes. And other events, including in labor relations, made me think that there had been some kind of consolidation in the mid-'80s, which it was then kind of the SSA took off. And so some of the early work by Bowles and Gordon and Weisskopf on the failures of Reaganism, or right-wing economics, or supply-side economics, their studies went up to about 83 or 84 and were published in 1986, I think covered the wrong period. That is exactly the confusing period where these things didn't work. But it did work after that. The new institutions worked after that. This greater change in investment institutions, this is similar to Terry's point about is the SSA global or national. It seemed to me the changes are much greater in the US and the UK, and in most of the continental European countries, of course, and very much greater in China and Russia than they are, say, in maybe Latin America. And China, all right, dominant political coalitions. The point here is that it's going to come back to is that usually these are coalitions that involve the center when they are consolidated. And in this coalition, later on I'll give you more of a history of this, going back to the 1890s, but right here, what I'm saying is the Reagan era starts out as a pretty conservative coalition, but becomes centrist inclusive in Congress, the so-called Reagan Democrats. They're still with us. And throughout this period, and there's, the Clinton era does not really change the view, the fundamental macroeconomics, so to speak, of what's going on. Just in the same way that the Eisenhower era did not change much of the kind of New Deal and more liberal SSA even though Eisenhower was also president for 8 years. Because what Rubenomics does, it says large deficits do matter, and we have to cut deficits. And we can't have fiscal policy anymore. Congress said that. Everything has to be fiscally neutral. So this thing that a lot of us learned in graduate school about macroeconomic policy and how effective it was, basically a Keynesian model, and monetarist, that was nonsense. That's all gone because the Democrats can't afford deficit expansion. They can't expand social programs very much. So there's a real limit on the social social model. So with Clinton, you have this tiny little. So now I'm going to shift to some quantitative slides. And the list is on here, and some of these are better known than others. So I'm going to skip the ones that are better known. But so a lot of them kind of show that this timing was about right. It isn't just our listing the institutions and saying, oh, this happened in such and such a year because there was a strike or something, but to actually see it in the profit rate or in some of the financial measures and so forth. I think I skipped over finance in my list there, but I meant to say that finance has been having obviously a bigger role. We'll come back to that when we do the slides. There are some surprises, which I think are going to point in the direction of why growth is slower in this period. One being that the rich have increased their consumption rates a lot. And it turns out the more wealth they have, the more they've been spending on consumption. So that means the idea of the higher up income scale you are, the less you're able to consume. The fundamental point from Cairnes isn't true in this area. It's called the wealth effect in standard literature. And it means the savings rates are not what they used to be. And I'll show you that savings rates the last few years have been negative in the United States. Down to zero by 2000. But that's all due to this change in the upper end. That means that we don't have to give up some of our income to capitalists so they can invest on our behalf and create jobs. We now give it up to them so they can spend on our behalf. It's like Malthus versus Ricardo in 1815, actually, where Ricardo was very critical of Malthus, and Malthus was right on this topic for further reasons. Corporate cash balances, I'm just going to show you this. It's really phenomenal when I started looking at it, that companies are retaining their earnings and spending them on investment. And so why this is something I'll try to get to toward the end. I'm not sure. This is a labor share chart, and very quickly, because I know I'm going to have more slides and have time to go over. It's just showing declines in labor share, especially in the Euro area. Less so in the UK and less so in the US. Now, labor share is not determined simply by power. There's elasticities and substitutions, capital output ratios, and so on. You have to know and think about when you do this work. But it's hard to believe that all those things are going in the same direction in every country. So something has been going on. Why has it not declined as much in the US? And in fact, actually, there's some people, that's to say the profit share hasn't grown that much, except in the last couple of years. There are some people, some more progressive friends in the U.S. that are arguing the profit share hasn't been increasing in the U.S. But I think what's going on here, and I've looked into this, is that a lot of the labor income in the United States is compensation to CEOs, and it's so all the stock options, capital gains are counted as compensation for labor services, and that's adding a couple of percent per year to this measure. So this year, every oil company executive in the United States got a huge bonus because earnings went up, profits went up so much for Exxon and Mobil and so on. Well, that's because the price of oil went up for reasons that women did their labor effort. So there's got to be some kind of new accounting system. Some of, I think, like, I don't know, let me not get into the options and calculation methods. This is a wonderful graph done by Thomas Piketty and Gonzalez-Perez. And what it does is it shows how the income distribution has changed in the United States, comparing the top 1% to everybody else. And Piketty and Gonzalez have a series of wonderful charts going. They're able to move up that income distribution far higher than anyone was able to decades ago. They got some IRS data. If they can go up to the top 100th 1% using tax returns, and they correct for them very carefully and so on. Basically, what this is saying, this is the where are we? This is the average income of the top 1%, and there's huge concentrations within that top 1%. So see, it went up some in this post-war period, but not that much. And this is in real dollars, as I recall. I think it's in real dollars. Yeah, $2,004. And then it takes this huge leap in the beginning here, it says 82, and it's continued to came down some during the 2001 stock market crash, 2000 stock market crash, of course, but it's come right back up again. This is a new update that's on Emmanuel's website. The 2004 data. And what this means, and this is all pre-tax income. So the average person in the top 1%, their income went from $300,000 in 1982 to almost $800 in 2001, probably this year it's back around 750 to 800. After tax, the increase was even greater. So this is like a tripling, basically, of incomes over this period of 25 years. And that's why I'm going to say this is a very successful SSA for one group, which is these people in the top 1%. And Saez does a very good job of showing that this isn't so much because they have more capital income that's part of it, but it's a lot of it's the result of changes in CEO pay. This one I'm going to skip. It's basically the same, some sort of same topic. This is also from Emmanuel Saez's co-author Kopchuk. And what he does is look at wealth shares, not income shares, but wealth shares, the top percent. And what he's also doing here is comparing it to what other studies, or at least in this chart, which I pulled out for us, comparing to what other people who looked at this study. The person who looks at this the most in the U.S., on the left is Ed Wolf at NYU, and Ed Wolf has been saying that that wealth shares have been growing. Of the top 1%, wealth has become more unequal, though that is not consistent with the studies, or just the data that's collected in the triennial survey of financial survey of consumers that the Federal Reserve does, which shows a pretty stable wealth concentration. And Saez, Kopchuk and Saez find it's also pretty stable over this period, right? What's going on here? How can you have income concentration growing so much, and capital income going up so much, and not have wealth concentration going up? What it means is they're not accumulating capital, they're spending it. That's what I saw. I leaned over to my colleague David Card when Saez was first presenting this in our department. I said, "They're spending all that money?" He said, "Yeah." And I asked Saez, "How can they spend so much?" And he said, "Oh yeah, you buy some houses and you have a lot of servants." And if you were right back to Carter versus Malthus, that's what Malthus was saying. That the land owners and their servants were using up the surplus for us very well. So some things maybe haven't changed that much. Okay, I'll come back to that later. But it seems to me that there's a slowdown in the rate of investment with this change. Consumption demand of the rich has come in to maintain aggregate demand. There isn't an aggregate demand problem for the short run, but for the long run, productive capacity won't be growing. These are some profit rate figures. You can also find them in Andrew Glynn's wonderful book, Capitalism Unleashed. Andrew will be with us tomorrow. I've updated the charts. These are from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And I know Jim Neal and Levy also have some of these tables. So again, no need to spend time on them, except to say that you do see this rise in the profit rate. This is all corporations just in the U.S. leading in the mid-'80s. So that seems to work with the timing, and you also see a somewhat faster increase in the post-tax profit rate because of the tax cuts of this era. This is just financial corporations, non-financial. I don't want to get on that too much. Let me talk about the ratio. The importance of finance in the economy. Finance has, 0 minutes? I've been going 30 minutes? Okay, they're not going to go much faster. Anyway, finance. Okay, this is the ratio of finance, net value added economy to non-finance. That's quite an extraordinary increase. There's a similar chart in the Economic Report as President this year. This is the table, or the figure I was showing about cash balances. Look what's happening here. This is a gigantic increase here in the ratio of cash to investment. And cash is on hand, but it's not being spent. So what's going on? It's supposed to be another chart. Well, there's a similar chart to this in the Economic Report of President Elizabeth. In the international question, this shows international profits have been growing, foreign profits for the U.S. companies, but so has the importance of profits of foreign companies in the U.S. And when you compare the two, you see that the inflows, basically the net flow, has actually trended downwards through all this period. So the U.S. is not the same imperial power that it was in terms of profits. Integration is a measure I just came across. Matthews is in cross-border flows. And what it shows is a big increase just in the last 10 years. I need to go back and data for previous years. The industrial countries, developing countries, you see this big explosion in exports, but even faster in developing countries in exports. For financial investments, direct investments or portfolio investments, the explosion has been much more in the rich countries rather than the poor countries. Okay, I'll skip these, except this one is another way to measure financial openness, those who are interested in financial globalization. I'm going to skip all my China stuff. These are the charts of savings rates that show the savings fall for the top quintiles. That's the top quintile there in income, and you see for the other quintiles, the lowest one is down here. They didn't fall. This is just the data in the 90s. This is a study that was commissioned by Greenspan and done at the Fed, which has been kind of buried since, but there were some articles about Stanford Americans as the rich, not everybody else. The same thing is true when you do it by education category. College graduates, high school graduates, no. College graduates, some college, high school graduates, no high school graduates. This idea that there's great amounts of consumer debt and people are perilous at the bottom is not borne out by this data. It's very different from what a lot of us teach or thought is true. So, to try to get to the end, what's going on with SSA? Very simply, super rich incomes have been sustaining consumption demand. And we now have surging U.S. productivity growth. This is some of the things that are indicating that it has been successful, but still strong. And I would include in that the finance has been a strength on the positive side. It's not just something that makes accumulation go down, or that's all bad for other countries. It's more of a mixed bag, I would say. Weaknesses. And so I'm getting close to the end. That's a long list too, but this is just to tell you there is a list of weaknesses, but they're speculative, and they're in the future. I'm not sure that they're in the present. Some fiscal deficits will hit us in a few years, but not tomorrow. The weakness of investment, go ahead and investment chart. I'm sure David wants to talk about that, so I'll get off here so he can. And the political challenges are great. The external challenges, certainly, and the internal challenge is the one that the Bush coalition can survive. And what kind of really impressed me here was a comment I had from Rick Edwards, who's also been sick and almost died, but has recovered. And this was done right after the 2004 election. He said that this was the peak of the power and popularity of the Republican Party. And since then, it's certainly gone down. So I thought about that. And yes, it's true that in previous coalitions, and I'll skip this history, because most of you probably know it or don't care, or be educated on another occasion. But basically, we have this history of going too far to the center-right coalition that goes to the right, loses the center, and gives way essentially to the Great Depression. Then we had a left-center, or liberal-center coalition, which a lot of us were responsible for getting rid of the center and bringing in more from the left, in the 60s and 70s. And that collapsed. That was defeated very strongly by 1980. And it did help on also the period, also was helped to usher in to great stagflation. So I think today you can sort of see this happening again, that the center has been expelled, in fact, from not included in any big way in the Bush coalition. When I think of the conservatives, part of this right being business, not business is centrist. And then there's the far right. What's going to happen? I'm not going to tell you. Leave it to other people. But I have some conclusions here, and they're kind of pablum. Not pablum, but they're kind of summarizing some of what I've been saying. There's one point here, though, I do want to emphasize, that while we've had a period of slower growth, I should have put this earlier in the slides, it's also been a period of greater economic stability in terms of fluctuations up and down, not just institutional stability. The recessions have been much shallower and much shorter, and we have to kind of factor that in somehow if we're going to kind of really do some kind of appraisal of how successful this SSA has been. Okay, I'm sorry to come so far